Hey,
Hello.
Andy, how are you?
Hey, Brian. Good. How you doing?
Not too bad. Good to see you. I know we skipped a month here, so this is our first time, since January, right?
Yeah. We skipped last month because things were well, it was Chinese New Year that last month, and I think we somehow couldn't coordinate our times. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's good to be back. How have you been?
been great. Been great. Markets have been all over the place, particularly today. I think we've got a great
Oh yeah.
timing on our show once again because there's so much that's going on with the FOMC announcement and stuff that I'm sure you're covering over at EquitiesTracker as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers. Today is on this side of the planet, Thursday, the 21st of March, and I think it's Wednesday, the 20th of March on your end.
Yep,
Evening.
exactly. We're just sitting here in the past compared to you.
Well, yeah. So welcome to all our viewers. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone is healthy and doing well. So okay, we have a pretty, we're gonna have a pretty interesting show this week or today, with what's happened in the I'd say last few days. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah.
mean, the theme is obviously all about the FOMC's decision and the panic that was happening just prior to it and the celebration that happened right after.
Yeah. I mean, I think since we last came on in January, Bitcoin actually hit an all-time high, and then it dropped something like 10K, 10,000, and then I think I haven't checked, but we're back at 67,000.
67.8. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, that all
So that.
time high was hit on, I believe, March 13th, a week ago today, from
Mhm.
my time zone. And
Yep.
it's kind of hovered around there as it was teasing potentially even going all the way to 75K before it rolled back pretty quickly to as low as the low 60Ks from what I saw. So it was a pretty sizable
Yeah.
drop.
Oh yeah. And I think it was interesting on the BitMEX exchange. I think someone dumped a bunch of Bitcoin there, and I think it hit as low as just under $10,000. So whoever had it parked to buy at 10 grand, congratulations to you! It was an instant 6x.
Yeah, I heard a little about it. I don't have the supporting data prepared for today, but we certainly saw some posts about that. I question how much one single address at this point in Bitcoin's life cycle can really impact, Bitcoin's price to the extent of like 10% or more if they just
Yep.
dumped it all at once. Even if you're talking about the biggest whales, it
Yep.
was likely a bit of a coordinated effort. I think that
Hmm.
a lot of the wallets that hold, large percentages of Bitcoin uh, are owned by individuals that know each other. They're owned by exchanges that know each other. There's a lot of shady stuff that's always happening, and we can certainly look at some of the on-chain stuff that looked a little bonkers. But yeah, I mean, we've got so many choices in what we can discuss. I think the immediate one would be the price rebound that we saw today. Um,
Yep.
and we can kind of backtrack from there and look at how the past week and even the the year to date for 2024, how the events related to the ETFs have changed things, how the
Yep.
volume has just been nuts there, but there have been a lot of outflows as of late. Could have been related to taxes that happened
Mhm.
here in April here in the US. So there's a lot of stuff we can go over.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the metrics. Oh, and before we start, for those of you who missed out, the founder of Santiment, Maxim, was actually down here in Malaysia about 2 weeks ago, and we had a class of about 30 people, and Max actually spent 2 days with them going through Santiment's on-chain metrics, and the crowd was obviously pleased, and minds were blown that weekend. So it was, and we, well, it wasn't just Maxim. We had a couple of Sentiment team members down here as well. So that was a really good session with the EquitiesTracker members. So they had their minds blown. They were extremely impressed with the metrics that you could get, or the tool that Sentiment is, and they played around with Senar, which is the for you to predictive markets for you to make your predictions. So it was good. I just wanted to make a shout out and to Maxim to say a great thank you, a big thank you, and to the entire Sentiment team for having such a great platform.
Yeah, biases aside, the fact that I work for him, I mean, he's a pretty knowledgeable guy, patient. He's the life force behind Santiment and the reason why we have the kinds of metrics we do. So I heard it was a great time, and I'm glad you enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It was amazing. They got a glimpse. So we had some traditional retail investors who got a glimpse into actually how transparent the crypto markets can be compared to traditional markets. Yeah, so that was really good.
That's awesome to hear. Well, I'll do my best maximum impression today and show what we have going on, and let's kind of go back and forth and talk about the kinds of things that you guys are interested in, so I can make sure to really highlight those.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into it. Over to you,
All
Brad.
right. Perfecto. Let me know if my screen is showing up okay.
Yep.
All right. So right here, this is essentially Santiment's home base, where we look at the social volume changes going on, the price changes, even market cap and volume changes over the past week. And, one of the things that really stands out before we get into the individual assets, just look at the overall market cap over the past 7 days. I do want to, let me give it a refresh, since this might be a couple hours old. So this was just today, to give you an idea of how we've rebounded. If I switch to 7 days, you'll see it looks a little more like you would expect. The market cap, instead of 8% down in the past week like it was a couple hours ago, now it's only down 6%. And the screener volume, basically every asset that Santiment has is on the screener, so roughly just under 2,900 assets at this point. It's up 23%. So clearly there's been a whole lot of polarization going on in the markets, where people are either taking profit, which I think there's been a little more of, or people are buying the dips after, people see the opportunities to buy into all the chaos and get in at the low 60Ks again for the first time in a long time. So really the big story is Bitcoin, of course, which is now at 67.9. I'm actually seeing 67.7. So it depends on the exact minute, because things are still very volatile. But the point is, Bitcoin dropping 7.3% the past week means altcoins are going to get hammered, because altcoins have just been surging over the past 5 months, particularly since the start of 2024 is when the altcoin dominance over Bitcoin really began, from what I saw. And it was kind of exchanging turns a little bit in terms of which altcoin sectors were jumping out into the lead at any given time. Meme coins was probably the biggest story. Floki, Doge, Bonk, a few other, Shiba, of course, and a few other ones that I can't remember and aren't that important. But there were so many assets out there that you really don't think about at all, that we're suddenly getting like 2x, 3x weeks that you almost never see. The only time we really saw anything comparable was back in mid 2021, prior to the April 2021, specifically the then all-time high that hit, where Dogecoin was going off. If you guys remember the GameStop and AMC situation, which were some big stocks that Reddit really pushed up with the power of crowd funds to sock it to those hedge funds out there. But it was a crazy time, and we're kind of seeing the same kinds of things happening over the past few weeks, up until we saw the big correction that started around the 13th. So here we are now. We're actually seeing everything being talked about less. So even though overall trading volume is up over the past week, they're doing it pretty quietly. There's not a lot of discussion related to all of the madness going on compared to the previous week. And that's probably attributed to the fact that people are just a little more excited during weeks where Bitcoin's hitting an all-time high compared to weeks where it's dropping off a cliff. So I'm not surprised to see social volume down, but overall, the market cap dropping 6% in a week, it's a pretty big deal. And it obviously, as I mentioned, it was a bigger deal before we saw a pretty big recovery in just the past 4 to 6 hours after the US got good news about the Fed deciding to keep interest rates at the same level. First off, Andy, I'd love to hear your take on, what you think that all means, whether it's a sign that we may just see this for the rest of the year. What do you think about the Fed's decision on that?
Yeah, I think this was what I was watching an interview with Lynn Alden, and I think there's some things that we aren't aware of, that, or many of us on the ground aren't aware of, is that whilst they may seem to have turned off QE, but it kind of is still happening in an indirect way, where somehow the money printers are still on, and there continues to be money or fiat being created. So I think there are many factors at play, but I think the news that just came out, obviously the market has responded and they are happy with what they've heard. So let's see what happens. But I think overall the general feeling is that people seem to be more hopeful, in the markets, especially in crypto land. Also, I think I woke up this morning to the news of BlackRock announcing that they'd be partnering up with Securitize in order to launch a tokenized fund. And I think I saw a clip of Larry Fink talking about it. So I think, I don't know. I mean, I see the beginnings of Wall Street adoption coming through.
Yeah, I think that BlackRock point is really interesting, because there's certainly going to be people wondering about a conflict of interest, because BlackRock's ETFs are such a big thing now, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, we're also a traditional crypto asset instead, if you prefer that, which could very well take away from their own client base. So I'm kind of curious on how that's going to work. There are experts out there who know much more about the situation than I do. But yeah, that could have had a positive effect on the market as well. And what we're looking at here, by the way, is the price comparison of Bitcoin in green, Ethereum in magenta here, gold in gold, and the S&P in teal. And you can see the big jump that they all had right at about the same time. This was as the news was breaking about the FOMC keeping interest rates the same, which, by the way, in previous instances where these kinds of announcements happen, there's often an initial good reaction followed by a longer bad reaction. I'm not going to say that's guaranteed to happen this time, but it has been common for whatever the short-term crowd's reaction is, the long-term result is the opposite of that for substantially longer. It worked the same way when people started to get very negative in 2022 about every interest rate hike. And by the last one, everyone was just selling as soon as they heard, interest rates are being hiked. And then all of a sudden that's the market bottom and prices go nuts. So I'm interested to see how the next literally 48 hours will go. Even just in the past hour from this recording, the hype stopped. People went off to dinner or whatever they're doing here in the US, or even in global areas where they're reacting to the FOMC news. And now prices are kind of flattening out here at 67K. So we may even put a poll up. It would be interesting to hear what your community says too. Do we see 70K first, or do we go back to 65K first? I would imagine people are going to be much more expecting 70K, which would be a bad sign, because we need the crowd, these small wallets, to be fearful and fudding and wanting to take profit while they think they have the chance to, so that whales eventually will pump markets and get us back to 70K and beyond. And I've got this chart here that's showing the real-time amount of people calling for buys versus calling for sells. We put it on a shared axis here. And you can see it's pretty overwhelmingly showing buy calls way out in the lead here, which is normal. I mean, you're always going to see maybe like 30 to 40% more buy calls, but I feel like it's gotten a little more extreme just eyeballing this. You see right here when people were starting to get very polarized, and then it flattened out. And then again, you have this big volatility on March 5th, and prices drop. Everyone gets opinionated. It seemed as though people were wanting to buy the dip, but it's hard to see. There's a pretty big sell candle right there also. So I think both of these instances previously were big negative reactions. There was a lot more FUD than usual. And that resulted in a continued climb that inevitably got us above 73K for the first time in history. Now we're kind of seeing, I mean, this one in particular, pretty big buy signal or expectation that this is a good time to buy from the crowd. And I would like to see a little more selling discussion going on right now to justify that we're going to rebound to 70K and beyond. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, that's I think you're right. I think you're right. And I learned something while Max was here. Should we take a look at supply distribution?
Absolutely. By the way, look at this Twitter, especially on Twitter. It's just overwhelmingly optimistic, and they're probably the biggest. I think definitively they're the biggest. So this probably has the most pull. Pay attention to the amount of optimism going on right now. Just a little bit of a warning sign. I'm not going to guarantee anything because we don't give investment advice, but based on history, there's some concerns there. Now, you mentioned supply distribution, Andy. I, of course, had that queued up because I wanted to get into it. And right now it's showing that the whales are kind of just chilling out. They're not taking crazy profits. Yes, they went down a bit. Let me zoom in here so you can see it a little more clear. So they were at its peak, literally the day of the all-time high. 13.13 million Bitcoin were held by wallets that had between 10 to 10,000 BTC in them. It's roughly 2/3 of the overall supply from this tier of wallets. That also translated to 66.85% at that date. They're now at 66.69%. So they had a little 0.16% drop in the supply. Obviously, that's, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars. It may be billions, it's close, but you can see just by looking at this, like, this is not a big drop, though, in their total amount of Bitcoin. And a lot of these are made up by miners, of course, because you'll often see the total amount exceeding the percentage because the miners are getting more and more coins of the new supply that's being printed as days go by, which is interesting. But the point is, I mean, February 4th, they were holding 12.98 million. They got up to 13.13 million, and now they're still at 13.11 million. Whole lot closer to where we were just last week than where we were back on February 4th when it was looking like they were dumping. So I like the look of that. What I am more concerned about is the dry powder part of the equation, which shows that Tether's kind of being dumped right now, and so is USD coin. And they've been kind of going on this down slope for quite some time, going all the way back to August for USD coin and June for Tether. That was when they were being held at their peak in these shark and whale tier level wallets. So it's kind of a mixed signal right now. The dark green line, in my opinion, still has the most alpha of these four, with the percentage held being the second most important. But when you see that the stable coins are clearly being exchanged for more Bitcoin rather than stable coins, like right here, for example, in June, you see how all the stable coins were going up, but so was Bitcoin. So they were basically taking fiat out of their personal, accounts in banks and injecting them into crypto. That's what makes crypto's market cap grow most prominently. When it's stable coins being exchanged for Bitcoin, it's a little more nuanced because there isn't always a net gain of, convertible dollars going into crypto, if that makes sense, Andy.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. The point you made about the growth of Bitcoin and also the growth of stable coins, meaning the crypto sphere is actually growing because people are exchanging their fiat currency into stable coin, getting ready to deploy.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the name of the game. Like, how much, there's a finite amount of dollars in the world, or whatever currency they use, and there's a finite amount of crypto. How much of those dollars or other fiat currencies are being moved in and out of any crypto asset at any given time? How much is the overall market cap of crypto going, even including stablecoins, which people often overlook as an important ingredient? So I think this is increasingly becoming something I'm personally trying to analyze because it has such a tight correlation to the direction of where Bitcoin's prices will go next. And obviously this line alone, for anyone who's using Santiment or decides to make a free account using code EquitiesTracker to get 25% off of your first purchase when you choose to do that, I recommend going straight for the 10 to 10,000 BTC tier because it gives a lot of free info on where prices are likely to go next. And also, I mean, I talked with Maxim the other day. So I do want to say our percentages of supply and exchanges are not totally accurate. However, the direction of where they're going is accurate. So when you're seeing a constant drop in Bitcoin supply and exchanges, that's a pretty good sign, especially what we saw right on March 3rd and 4th here, where it just plummeted with so much BTC being moved into hot and cold wallets and away from exchanges. And that's a pretty nice sign that we were going to be able to continue to climb. And we really haven't seen that Bitcoin move back to exchanges yet, which is a great sign that there may not be the big, huge plummet that people are expecting. Maybe it already happened. Maybe we have a couple more waves in us going into the 50Ks or something, but it's hard to see too many red flags right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brian. For those of the viewers who don't know, there's only a finite amount of Bitcoin. So, what that really means is when Bitcoin moves off of exchanges, and if demand, whether it stays constant or increases, as long as they don't withdraw it from the exchange, we don't have a bank run yet. But effectively, it would cause a bank run if everybody wanted to withdraw the amount of Bitcoin that they wanted. I mean, that's assuming that the exchanges don't have one-to-one. But if they did have one-to-one, then that'll be fine. But as soon as people start moving their Bitcoin off of exchanges, that means there's less to actually buy. And what happens when supply is low and demand stays constant or increases, the price goes up. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's well said, Andy. And of course, that segues the discussion about the halving, which is now under 1 month away. April 19th, 2024, at least here in the US, is the target date for the mining to become twice as difficult. And with that, it means that the remaining supply of Bitcoin that can be mined will theoretically occur at half the speed in which it has for the past 4 years before the last halving happened. And generally when that happens, the theory is that each existing Bitcoin becomes that much more valuable. It's just like mining for gold, right? And if we're suddenly all notified that there's that the mining picks to get out the gold are half as effective, that means the existing gold that's already been mined is going to be worth more. And historically, going back to 2020, 2016, and 2012, this has resulted in Bitcoin going up in value shortly after this halving, or even right before, in anticipation, and kind of proving that theory about supply, the finite amount of supply being accurate. So
yeah, and in this cycle, what's interesting is that we have the additional ETFs that are demanding Bitcoin and needing to purchase Bitcoin, because for those who don't know how the ETF mechanisms work, people with a stockbroking account can purchase a Bitcoin ETF, and with fiat money, with normal money, currency, whether it's the US dollar or the Singapore dollar, whatever it is. And once they've purchased it, what the ETF providers will need to do is take this money and go and find Bitcoin to buy and store it in their cold wallets. And I think most of them are storing it with Coinbase custody. So what's interesting is what happens if you have all this money and you're going out to the market and you have to buy, you have to purchase this Bitcoin and store it, and there isn't enough to go around. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So in this cycle, I guess that's the variable that sticks out from the last, the previous two cycles.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And I want to remind everyone, Bitcoin's a zero-sum game at the end of the day, just like every asset out there. There's a metric that Andy and I have gone over on previous shows called MVRV, where it's essentially measuring the average returns of every single wallet in a given period of time, in this case 30 days, in this case 365 days, and seeing how much they are either in profit or at a deficit compared to when they bought it. And for the first time in a long time, just prior to the big bounce that we had in the last few hours, we actually saw that the 30-day average wallet was in the red. It got as low as a little over 6%, or down 6%, I should say, which indicated that we likely had a good buy opportunity at that time. You want to buy when others are in pain on average. You want to take profit when others are hugely in profit themselves and are euphoric, and undisciplined traders are buying more even though they're already in profit, right? So the fact that we saw this signal, I think it was less than 24 hours ago. Yeah, this was like 16 hours ago. This was an ideal time to buy. And obviously it was aided by the great FOMC news, but regardless, I'd keep an eye on that. And I would also keep an eye on funding rates, which have been a big story because they were so bullish here for so long. You can see right before that all-time high, just huge funding rate spikes on Binance, indicating longs were paying shorts just to open those big margin trades to try to, get as much as possible while Bitcoin was continuing to climb. And obviously, as you would imagine, a lot of these longs got burned and liquidated pretty quickly after Bitcoin retraced about 10% or so. So now it's a little more neutral. I mean, Binance looks like it's right about flat once again. BitMEX is flat. DYDX just slightly long. And Deribit, I'm not even seeing it on our graph right now for whatever reason. But yeah, it's calmed down, which is a great sign. It means that the greed in terms of where people are putting, their money where their mouth is, it's dissipated significantly.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, during that period, when demand was so high, it was interesting uh, the inch or the reward rate that was being given for stablecoin on those centralized exchanges. I think I saw one as high as 30%
Wow.
APR. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's telling you just how overheated the market was getting. And
Yeah.
what goes up must come down at some point. It's always the case. It doesn't mean it's going to go all the way down. Some people, see a drop to 60K and think, oh, I'll just wait for 30K again. It may never get there, or it might take years to get there.
Yeah.
But, pay attention to how everyone else is thinking. If you are the only person on the planet that thinks that prices will retrace below 50K again or 40K again, that significantly increases the likelihood of that coming true, because the crowd are all bullish and saying up, 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 up. So I think this is a fascinating time right now. And we just are going to continue to monitor the overall bullish versus bearish sentiment of the markets right now. I want to also shout out our developers that just added this widget here, so we can look at individual assets and see what the overall bearish to bullish sentiment is according to all of their commentary on Twitter, Reddit, Telegram, 4chan, and even Bitcoin Talk, which we just added. So we scrape all of those, and using our proprietary algorithm, we can tell how unironically people are bullish or bearish with every comment they make. And it gives us this meter, which is awesome. So Ethereum is more or less kind of neutral right now, while you can see some of the more like airdroppy or meme coin assets out there, like Shroom and Game. They're much more in the bullish area due to recent spikes that they've had. So
That's really cool. That's a really cool feature.
7, very much neutral at the moment, which is a great sign, because everyone started to get scared after the drop this past week.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, can you think of any other topics we might want to touch on?
Yeah, I think the other news headline that I saw this morning is that the SEC was going after the Ethereum Foundation because they deem Ethereum as a security instead of yeah.
This is a story that Ripple and XRP traders out there know very well. Ethereum's been under attack for being a security before, and it does appear that there is that exact story that Andy's referring to right here about it being a security classification, regulatory risk, counterparty risk, market manipulation, all sorts of stuff that has made Ethereum very polarized right now. And by the way, Santiment AI generates all of this just by gathering all the conversations going on around the internet, which I think is pretty awesome.
That is really awesome. That's a really cool feature to have.
And it gives a bullish summary too. I wouldn't be surprised if it says everyone is scared by this securities situation, and therefore it's creating a higher potential for a breakout, which, by the way, it is outpacing Bitcoin at the time of this recording.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and just a trivial trivial note here. In Malaysia, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, XRP, and a few other coins. So the regulator here in Malaysia have classified all the approved cryptos as a security. So therefore, all securities laws would apply to it. So
Very
different jurisdictions treat them differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every country and region in the world, they can treat it in their own way.
Yeah.
The U.S. being the power that we are, whether I like that or not, I'm certainly not saying that in a braggy way, but the U.S. does have a large control of where crypto assets head simply because it's the largest um, overall market that has
Absolutely.
unproven, I guess, but it has theoretically the most crypto owned by citizens in this country.
Yeah,
China, I know, has
absolutely.
been up there too. I don't know what the exact stats are, but yeah, obviously, U.S. and Chinese policy is going to matter more than
Yeah.
Bangladesh's.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see how this how this plays out.
I think so too. Yeah, and Ethereum is the number one trending token right now for the exact reason that Andy named here. So
And cool. And I think I kind of right on time, aren't we?
yeah, I think so. One last thing, by the way, I wanted to show the new crypto narratives dashboard we have. This
Wow.
essentially is exactly what it looks like. It's showing the top 15 to 20 subjects that are kind of circulating around crypto over the past 2 weeks and giving the overall amount of social volume related to them on like an hour by hour basis. So, for example, you can see that right now, rising topics are involving ETF inflows. You can see it's clearly getting wider. BTC is clearly getting wider once again. You can see when we were really getting greedy last week, BTC was not being talked about. It was much more of a narrow line, especially right here. Look at how little Bitcoin was being talked about just before all-time high, because everyone was talking about things like Pepe and things like Solana and, if you want to call them that, competitors of Bitcoin. So that's kind of how the cycle works.
That's interesting. That's a really cool graph right there.
I love it. Yeah, we're still trying to find really great use for it in terms of price market prediction. But I think in general, if you've woken up from a month-long coma and you want to know what's going on in crypto, this would be the first place to start, just based on it automatically pulling the top topics.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool.
But yeah, that's about it, Andy. It's always nice to catch up with you and talk crypto and visit with your community. I do want to
Yeah,
remind everyone, you've got that EquitiesTracker discount coupon code for anyone who wants to use Santiment. And right now it's a pretty good time to use it, I'm telling you.
absolutely. It's a fantastic tool. It's great, and you'll be surprised at how much transparency the crypto market has. It's amazing. Yeah. So there you go on screen. It should be scrolling across. Use that discount code EquitiesTracker to get 25% off. Closing thoughts, Brian?
I think we are going to probably be shifting our collective focus to the halving for the next few weeks here. I'm very interested to see how euphoric and greedy people get related to
Mhm.
it. Some people think the price has already been baked in, and that's what the past 5 months have been about. Other people think the mainstream crowd hasn't even been thinking about it. If it's the latter, then we've got a little ways to potentially climb before the FOMO really kicks in. Uh, but some people, think about like a big known event for Apple or something. Usually the stock is rising weeks prior to it. And then the people who already know how the event's going to go, they're the ones jumping out when they saw that everyone else pushed up the price for them. So there could be a little bit of that too, but this isn't like pre-predictive. Sometimes you have to see day by day. Are people suddenly making this topic viral, or are they keeping it on the down low? So I think the halving is the big one we're going to be revisiting when we talk next month.
Yeah, yeah. I think by the time we talk next month, it'll be. Did we say it was the 19th The halving's on the 19th. So I'm
My
just checking.
19th,
Yeah,
which would be Friday,
we'd be talking on the
17th.
10th or 11th, was it?
I can't remember. Do we talk the second or
Yeah,
third week of the month?
second week of the month.
Okay. So we'll talk about a week before it happens.
Yeah, and then let's see what happens. Yeah, it'll be exciting.
Can't wait, my friend.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you, Brian, for spending your evening and your time with us. And I appreciate, the community appreciates what you do, and what a great platform that Sentiment is. So we look forward to our next one, and our viewers look forward to it.
Thanks for having me, my friend. Great visiting with everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.